Hey, what's going on, everyone? Desktops Gaming here. Welcome back to the channel and welcome to the new space. We did finally get moved. If you guys checked us out in our last video, we talked about we were moving into a new setup. Now this one's not completely done yet. Still got a lot of decorating to do. Still got the new desk to build as soon as that comes back in stock. But today we figured since we were able to get our hands on one of the new Ryzen 5000 series CPUs, we would take a look at it today, do a few benchmarks, kind of going over it, comparing it to our typical 3600 we have here. Like I said, we were able to luckily get our hands on one of those. We still haven't been able to fully find a 3000 series card yet. So we're just as frustrated as you guys are on that. So like I said, I got a few numbers pulled up on this test we have today. But like I said, luckily we were able to get a 5600X at launch. We were pretty shocked we were actually able to get one of those. Like I said, it's been a real pain trying to find any new hardware in the market right now. We're still kind of crossing fingers that we'll be able to get a new Radeon 6000 series card launching tomorrow or today, depending on when this video goes live. But they are launching on the 18th, so we're going to try to shoot for one of those on launch day. Probably go for the 6800 XT. Yeah, so we understand you guys' concerns with stock issues. Like I said, we still have our 2070 Super in our current system. Like I said, been the only card been able to keep around. Like I said, we've at least pushed for one of the 30 series cards with no luck. From what we're hearing, not much better stock issues on the Ryzen 6000 stuff, but we'll keep you guys posted on anything we hear about that. But again, we just want to be able to take a look at this guy today. So we have the new Ryzen 5 5600X here, comparing it to the Ryzen 5 3600 from last generation. Definitely saw some major performance increases in this guy that we wanted to go over today. So we're going to be diving into some benchmarks in that in just a second. As you can see with the new setup, it's pretty bare right now, so do give us a little bit of time here. Like I said, we'll be working on building a new desk setup here soon. Obviously some more decorations going on in the back here. It's kind of bland and bare currently because we're still kind of working on a bit of a temporary setup, but I appreciate you guys for sticking around with us, and hopefully we'll get the new space settled here soon. But kind of due to everything currently and human malware, as Gamers Nexus calls it, it's been hard to get stock of just about everything, not just PC components, sadly. So we'll go and dive into some benchmarks here. The 3600 has been a CPU I've been recommending for a long time for gaming, even light workloads. The 5600X is just the culmination of a generation performance increase between Zen 2 and Zen 3. I mean, specs-wise, it's still a 6-core 12-thread part. This time around with a base of 3.7 gigahertz and a boost of 4.6. The biggest benefit seen between the two generations that I've noticed has been their single-core performance mainly. This achieved mainly through Zen 3 having more cache available to lower memory latency. It's just honestly impressed me how close AMD's talks were of the 19% IPC increase was true. So we're going to go and dive into some benchmarks here real quick. We'll do some workstation tasks first, then we'll dive into some power consumption thermals, then we'll dive into at least one gaming benchmark. I haven't had a whole lot of time to do a ton of testing. So like I said, this has been the first day we've been able to set our 5600X up. Starting off with, we'll do some compression benchmarks. Not only will this test the highlight of an overall core usage, but also, this compression test is thread dependent as well. We pulled some of these numbers here we're about to show you from community data, as well as we're only testing the 3600 and the 5600X we have on hand. But I wanted to show some community data to show the range that these CPUs kind of have from both AMD and Intel. So in this chart you see here, the first thing you notice is the 1500X is an absolute monster and is out by a long shot in comparison to every other CPU that's on the chart. And as we move down to the 5600X, you'll see it surpasses the 10600K, which shows you how well that IPC boost is showing it through on Zen 3. Generationally comparing the 5600X to the 3600, we can see an overall, right at 100,000 point boost. And even comparing it to the last gen 3900X, we don't see the 5600X falling that far behind. Now let's talk power consumption and CineBench scores. Let's start with stock settings first. And this is under stock loads running CineBench R20. The 5600X is definitely the most power efficient CPU out right now at around 68 watts. This thing just sips power, as you can see, compared to the other CPUs on this chart, which again verifies, the bit of AMD's claims about performance per watt increase. Again, these are stock frequency loads at 100%, and as you can see, the 5600X sits at a measly 68 watts on average, and it just creeps up from there in usage. As we move up through the Intel parts and the higher end AMD parts, as you can see there, the 5900X at 138 watt average. Then that's to be expected from a 12-core, 24-thread part, but I'd still call that impressive for what that CPU is able to pull off, considering it as a 12-core, 24-thread part. So you can see that 5600X sitting at 68 watts, and the highest end 5900X at 138 watts. Now, we did do some overclock performance on power consumption as well. Overall, still very power efficient in consumption for the clock speeds we got out of this 5600X, not even breaking 100 watts used. Granted, I will note for my 5600X, I was able to maintain 4.7 gigahertz at 1.215 or so volts, while getting all the way up to 4800 megahertz. I landed on, it required about 1.32 to 1.35, depending on the different tests we ran. CineBench did require us to do about a 1.35 volt to get all cores up to 4.8 gigahertz. So that's a pretty good amount of voltage increase to get that extra 100 megahertz in performance. So for long-term use, I'd probably still settle on about 4.7 all core and call that a day. However, with this chip, if it does seem to want to handle more power, so if you're up to giving it a little more of a boost there and filling up the challenge, I think this will definitely be a fun CPU to try to overclock. Because as you can see there, we did end up getting up to around 96 watts or so. Running it at 4.8, we did see it creeping up to 97 a little bit too. Like I said, under that 4.8 gigahertz overclock we were running. So let's move on to some CineBench Arch20 scores. These are stock out of the box settings to give a fair comparison between the two, or between the different CPUs we put in the chart. Of course, this is a multi-core test and very core dependent. That's why you can see the 5900X out here in front by a good shot. But overall, you can see the 5600X beating the 3600 by a bit over 1,000 points. So it's a very good improvement over last gen, I'd say, with that with our 3600 sitting at about 3552, and then the 5600X sitting at 4565. All right, so for the test we were able to run today, we did a Call of Duty Modern Warfare test at 1080p high settings, only gaming benchmark we were able to get through today. So let's start with that first. So looking at the chart here, we can see an average increase around 19 to 20 frames or so, comparing the 3600 to the 5600X. Like I said, you can see it's definitely up within the charts with Intel's 10700K. So definitely a solid generational increase, as far as comparing it to last generation, a 3000 series. Now getting into temps, for comparison between the 3600 and 5600X, we used a Deepcool AS500, which is a single 140 fan tower cooler, similar to a kind of a mid-size Noctua cooler. With the 5600X, thermals were not too bad, especially considering the OCs we did. So let's compare these via CineBench. For the worst case, since gaming, typically you won't experience 100% utilization across all cores and threads. In CineBench R20 under stock conditions, we saw around 67 degrees stock and around 76 degrees overclocked when we were bumping up to that 4.8 gigahertz. When we push the voltage around 1.35 volts to maintain the 4.8 in CineBench, the 5600X isn't getting all that hot. Considering this is such a low watt TDP part, we're not seeing a huge amount of heat generated, considering while it was C to 4.8, we only saw a wattage around 93 to 94 watts on average. While the 5600X does come with a stock Wraith cooler, you'll definitely get better temps. With a better cooler, the stock cooler will do fine for anything you're setting just for stock. Considering it, you wouldn't mind it being a little bit noisy at once you start putting it under load. Most people won't buy this more budget-focused CPU to put it underwater, but I could see it more cost-effective. Maybe a 240mm AO doing more than enough to cool this CPU down. So, in conclusion, for power consumption, it's by far one of the best on the market. It's crazy the clock speeds you can achieve at below 100 watts. Thermals are great and game performance is fantastic. So if you weren't early adopter of the 2000 series of Ryzen CPUs and held out until now to upgrade, you'll definitely will see the giant improvement. But these were still good improvement from last gen as well, coming from 3000 series. So going from the 3600 to the 5600X, while it's a more lateral move, it's still a bump in performance, especially in gaming and single core performance. And if you plan on doing any kind of work with the CPU, the multi-core is definitely improved as well. Overall, still one I could recommend. That being said, if you're moving into gaming at 1440 or 4K, it'll make a less of a difference of what CPU you have, as you'll be more GPU bound at those resolutions. So the question you have to ask yourself, is where are you at? What are you doing with the CPU? Will you need 2 more cores and go with the 5800X? Will you need 4 more and go with the 5900X? Or are you just gaming? Or could you take advantage of the higher, core count CPUs for gaming and, work production or editing, whatever you're going to be doing with the CPU? So again, hopefully everything normalizes soon and you guys will be able to get your hands on the CPU if you do need the upgrade. Like I said, I think it's still kind of more of a lateral move between the 3600, but we were still really impressed with the clock speeds we were able to achieve on this 5600X. So overall, definitely a good generational improvement. Definitely if you're coming from 2000 series, but even if you're coming from 3000, I think it's still a solid move, especially if you want to do, get a little more out of gaming because that increased IPC and the clock speeds we were able to achieve with it, but also, even in multi-core performance, like I said, we even saw in, just in CineBench, even though that's a synthetic, across the board, we'll still do some more testing with this when it comes to our, render times and all that stuff too. So when we do, video rendering and stuff like that. And of course, I'm sure you guys have seen other benchmarks and reviews out there as well. So hopefully you guys can check those out, kind of make a better informed opinion of when these do become stock available again and they're readily available at all times. Definitely check out other reviews as well. Look into more what you're going to be doing with it or the games you're going to be playing. Because as far as the games across the board, we did see a pretty good improvement with Modern Warfare, but every game's been a little different. Intel still holds out on a few games from what we've seen, as far as still kind of holding the gaming crown, but AMD's definitely taken that away from them, I think, this generation. And Intel will definitely have to course correct a good bit if they still want to maintain that crown, because we've learned that clock speeds don't mean everything. This IPC performance, even with it not being able to keep the same clock speeds Intel can boost to, doesn't really matter because you're getting more instructions per clock out of this generation. So the next coming videos, we'll be doing some more cleanup of the setup here, a little more decorating as well. Like I said, gotta get that desk set up together, and we have a pretty fun little thing coming along. We're pulling out this guy, this really overkill 420mm AIO from Arctic. They just sent this over here, one of the new products. So we'll be slapping this on the 5600X, and then of course when we get a 5900X in as well. Looks like this will be way overkill for the 5600X, but I think this will be fun to take a look at and see what we can get out of this guy. So really appreciate you guys for stopping by. Again, drop a comment down below if you guys want to see more benchmarks with the 5600X. We'll be doing more coming soon. And of course, if you guys want to have any suggestions for the new setup, we'll be working on that soon as well. So again, check back for more of this guy. Take it easy.